Good day. My name is Fadi Manawi. I'm here with Visa Place Legal. I'm the U.S. attorney with the firm. I'm joined today with Lauren Cohen of eCounsel Global. And today, Lauren and I will be discussing what it really takes to move to Florida, as we've been seeing a high demand of these types of questions coming up lately. So we thought it would be a good idea just to focus this webinar on that in particular.
Yes, high demand is an understatement, really. I mean, I've never had so many inquiries and questions, and it's just an amazing thing what's going on. Absolutely.
What do you think is driving all of this right now?
Lockdown.
So yeah, I'm seeing the same thing. These are mostly Canadians
Mm-hmm.
going to the U.S. and
Correct.
they're really focusing on Florida more than anything else.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because Florida's open. I mean, let's not talk politics, right? It's just
No,
open. First of all, it's warm. I'm not dealing with 0 or -4. I'm dealing with right now, it's 23 or 24 Celsius outside. It's
right.
beautiful and sunny, and people are done. They're just done with being stuck at home on lockdown. And when you go outside, freezing and shoveling snow for to go nowhere. It's just it's a tough thing right now. What's going on for sure?
Right, right. No, I mean we're definitely seeing the same type of sentiment from many people, I mean it has been fueled in the last in the last year. It's been a real big surge in demand,
I
and
would say, Fadi, it's since the January 1st. I mean, and then, what,
Mhm.
2 weeks ago, I think, 2 weeks ago, Monday, another lockdown happened. And all of these lockdowns impact what's going on in terms of the demand. And it's just, I think people are just finally like, okay, it's happened once, it's happened twice. Now we're
Right,
done.
right. No, I mean definitely. I know you're in Florida currently. I'm in Canada, so definitely experiencing the same over here.
Yeah.
So the questions that typically do come up are, what are the ways for myself and perhaps my family to pick up and move to Florida, right? These questions come up. We've been fielding these types of queries on a regular basis, and so I thought it might be a good way to start there. Maybe we
Sure.
can talk a little bit about, just what are some of the options. Again, we're not going to get into the gory details of what, each of these visas, entail. But I think first and foremost, I've been seeing a real big demand for E2 visas. And,
Huge demand.
and I'm sure you're seeing the same. Yes.
Yes,
And, we've been actually co-piloting some of these, you
absolutely.
and I, and
That's right.
that's how we work best, right?
Correct,
Uh,
exactly, because we complement each other. I don't do what you don't do what I do, and the client gets the best of both worlds.
Perfect. Yeah, I agree. So just sort of an overview of an E2. So with the E2, the unique thing about the E2 is that the person immigrating to the US does not need to have already an existing business, right? So maybe there's been an idea that's been sort of festering in person's mind. I'd like to do this, but maybe now is not the opportune time to do it in Canada because that's not maybe it's not conducive for that type of business currently, or just don't want to be sort of limited as to what they can do. Plus, again, dealing with everything else, the cold weather,
Mhm.
the gloominess of today's world, right?
What is
So
it called? SADS, right? Sudden seasonal affect disorder
it
syndrome. Is that
is.
it? Yeah,
It
I
is.
remember it well. Sitting downtown Toronto, working at Adelaide and Young, as an articling student, looking outside of the window to gray every day, and I was like, why am I doing this? And that was it. That's actually what prompted me to leave. I said, I'm done. I don't need to be here anymore, and that
Right.
was the end of it. Literally, I left before I was called to the bar.
Oh, wow. Okay, I didn't realize that.
Well, I came back.
Yeah.
I moved back, but I've lived here twice. So I lived there. I'm sorry. Obviously, I grew up there. I lived here for 3 years. I went back home and then I moved here.
Okay. All right. And that's and that's where you're happiest.
Usually, most of the time, I miss my family and it's been very challenging, but yeah, I couldn't imagine not having my pool and my peace and my beach. I'm going to stay at the beach this weekend,
Hmm.
and palm trees and warmth and being able to walk the dog every day, and
Right.
just definitely a lifestyle choice.
Hmm.
And nowadays I think it's a lifestyle must. And
Right.
so, Florida is appealing. It's always been appealing to Canadians, but now it's even more appealing. And don't get me wrong, we don't just work with Florida, because I'm also a realtor as well as a lawyer, as Fadi knows. And we work, I have 48 referral agreements out there right now, Fadi, for people that are looking for
Hmm.
real estate around the country. But at any given time, Florida is always going to be the number one demand because it's an obvious place to come.
Right. And in terms of okay, so I do have questions about that, but
Okay.
I guess let me just finish my thought about the E2, and then we can definitely go back and forth. So the E2, it does, I was saying it's a good option for many people, just because you don't have to have a business already set up elsewhere. And I know we're talking about Canadians moving to Florida, but this doesn't necessarily mean Canadians. It could be for many different nationalities.
Mexicans, Israelis,
Exactly.
English, people from
Yeah,
the UK.
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, so long as there's a treaty between that country of nationality and the U.S., then there's an eligibility for an E2.
yep,
So the E2 does require an investment, right? It has to be, the terminology is that it's a substantial investment. The investment has to be at risk, and the business has to be one that is not marginal, meaning it's going to be the type of business that the individual is going to be able to hire somebody eventually, or hire
not just
somebody.
themselves.
Exactly. So for that sort of lone person that is maybe accustomed to doing things on their own and saying, well, maybe I can do the same thing in the US, and not wanting to hire people, I don't think that's the right solution for that person. But for almost any type of business, and I mean, we've seen this across so many different industries, right? So from retail, food and beverage, real estate, manufacturing, right? Like it's we see it across the board. And I would say it's usually my go-to in a situation like when you have an individual that it does not really have a job offer in the US, does not have family in the
Right.
US.
Hmm.
um, maybe the person has a business in Canada. Maybe they're going to keep that business in Canada, or in the country, and expand into the US. In which case, we still may recommend the E2 in that case, right? So um, maybe let's talk a little bit about that, Lauren. So the E2, I know you deal with a lot in real estate, and we've had seminars, exclusively speaking about using real estate for an E2. But can you give sort of an overview of what that looks like from a real estate perspective? So if I'm an individual that has a condo in Florida,
No.
and I want to get an E2, can you? So what do you mean by using real estate to get an E2?
So there's a big difference between, first of all, owning real estate for your personal purposes or for vacation use or whatever, owning one or two rental properties, investment properties, and being a significant real estate investor that has a real estate business. And it's only the latter that's going to potentially qualify for an E2. Like Fadi said, your investment has to be at risk. Well, in real estate, it's not really at risk, is it? So you have to have that much higher of a threshold in real estate. You have to do property management. You have to run multifamily. You have to actually run a business and hire people in order to potentially use real estate to qualify. And my superpower is really in transitioning from, oh, I own one or two, rental properties, to I'm a real estate investor and I have a real estate investment business. I do property management and I'm getting an E2 visa.
Mhm.
So it's not there's not a fine line. It's not a hard and fast rule like EB5, which has specific numbers and specific employees. It's all about looking at the individuals and their business and how their business can manifest into an E2. It's not one fiveplex or two 10plexes. It's about what is the return, are the needs, are they turnkey, do they need work, is it rehab, is it the
Mhm.
burr method, buy, rent, renovate, refinance, repeat. Like, how does that work? So that's where the real estate component comes in, and obviously, being a realtor helps to kind of pave that path in a different way. But that's not the only way. Certainly, it's an unusual way, but a lot of people want to own real estate, so it's a great way. But there's you name the business industry, and there's a possibility of finding a visa option with it, especially with the E2.
Right. No, definitely. Um, when it comes to the E2, I think it's important to note that this is a type of application. It is a consular application, right? And we're currently seeing that there's a little bit more of a delay than we'd like to see through the U.S. consulate in order to get the actual interview and be able to pick up and move to the U.S. But it's definitely on the top of the list, I think, as to one of the main options that these candidates are qualifying for, and we do, as a law firm on our end, we take care of the immigration side of things. We do a lot of these, so we're seeing these types of applications firsthand. Um, and as I like to normally say, like, we don't just dabble in this stuff. Like, this is what
Right.
we deal with on a regular basis.
Correct. Exactly. You can't dabble in E2s. Oh, I did an E2 like 5 years ago. No.
Right.
And way too many people are playing lawyer these days, and oh, I have an E2, so I must be an expert at E2. No.
Mhm.
And indeed, there's a whole other option that needs to be addressed, especially for the Canadians that are desperate to get out. Because unfortunately, as a Canadian, I feel, believe me, I empathize, because I would probably want to leave too and be frustrated myself.
Mhm.
There is an option that allows you a little bit of a quicker path, but the problem is they can't travel with this option. It's called the change of status visa.
Mhm.
You have to come into the US. Now, if you're not vaccinated, I know we're going to talk about this a little bit because it's a whole political thing, right? If you're
Mhm.
not vaccinated, your situation is just different than if you are. And if
Right.
you aren't vaccinated, the reality is your best bet is probably going to be come into the country, develop the business. We find you a business. We can work with you to develop that model, figure that out, and get you that business, create the structure, the franchise. I love franchises, by the way. I work with many of them, and
Mhm.
then get you a business plan ready. You wait 3 months, and Fadi will go through this. Usually it's 3 months, so you don't have a dual intent, because when you come in with a visitor's visa, you intend to be a visitor, and when you get an E2, you're no longer a visitor. So after 3 months plus a day, we can apply for premium processing of your E2 light, I call it. It's a change of status visa within the US. Like I said, the two downsides is, one is you cannot travel. So you can't, but really, if you're not vaccinated, you're not gonna be able to travel anyway, because you can't go back and forth into the US. You're gonna be lucky if you get through the border once, and there's no guarantee, and we'll talk about that. Neither Fadi nor myself nor anybody can really guarantee what's going to happen at the border. It's the luck of the draw. Okay,
Right.
if they ask or they don't ask. So you get in, you don't want to keep taking that risk and go out and in and out and in, right?
Mhm.
And then you get the beauty. I'm sorry. The second negative, I guess, is that it's only 2 years, whereas Fadi, the regular visa, is 5 years.
For a Canadian, it's 5 years,
You're a
correct?
Canadian.
Mhm.
So, this is an E2 light, but you can renew it every 2 years. It's a hassle, but look, it's better than being on lockdown for a lot of people, right?
Mhm.
The upside of it, which is why a lot of people like this, is you can get the answer in 15 days if you pay for premium processing. That doesn't happen in Toronto right now, where
Right.
you're waiting 8, 10 more months, right?
Could be.
It was up
Yep.
to 400 days, I heard.
Right.
So I see a huge amount of demand for this, and realistically, it is a very viable option. But you
Mhm.
are going to have to move quickly. Urgency, folks, urgency. The longer you wait, the less likely you are to get over the border, particularly if you're not vaccinated.
Yeah. And I mean, we're seeing a lot of that as well, the E2 change of status. And I know there's a lot of Canadians that are in the US maybe right now because it's January, it's cold in Canada. They don't want to be in Canada.
Yeah,
So
they want to
for
stay.
those individuals, if they are already in the US and don't necessarily want to come back in spring, and they want to actually do something that's a little bit more productive, going to earn an income and everything else in the U.S., then definitely the E2 change of status is part of the solutions, I would say, right? It's not. Yes,
Absolutely.
it's only good for 2 years. It's renewable as well. Like it can be renewed, but the way I look at it is it's a real sort of interim solution because Lauren, you and I don't know what's going to happen with these like
We
vaccine
don't know.
rules.
I believe me, I wish I had a crystal ball because I
Right.
have no idea. And if I had a dollar for every time somebody asked Buddy, I'm sure you and I would be
Mhm.
probably basking in Fiji or something like the constant question. Well, are they going to let me through the border? I don't know.
We don't know.
Don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know.
And you know what else has been coming up? Are they going to be, how long are these vaccine requirements going to remain in effect? We don't know.
And are they going to impose them on outside of green cards? They're going to impose them on an E2, which I think is probably going to happen because, folks, as I'm sure you've learned from Visa Place, as of November 1st of last year, you cannot get a green card without proof of vaccination.
Right.
So that and we don't know when they're going to apply
Well,
that rule to non-immigrant visas. Likely soon. We don't
so
know.
yeah, there's actually already some rules in place where unless you are today, as of the date of this webinar, essential travelers are still allowed into the U.S. if they
Mhm.
are deemed as an essential traveler. So what does that really
What's
mean?
essential, right?
Yeah, what and I mean, yeah, for the truck drivers and so forth, like they're taking loads to the U.S. and that's still applicable today. But um, in January of 2022 is and the date I'm seeing is January 22nd of 2022.
One
But
week,
then I've heard,
right?
yeah, then I've heard from one port of entry they've already told client no, it's on January 15th. So it's not, unfortunately, there's not some solid information on this. It's
Consistency is not key here, is it?
it's not.
I think it's inconsistency. Like, my mom came across about 3 weeks ago it
Mhm.
at Windsor. Nobody asked them. Now they're vaccinated, but nobody asked them. But tomorrow they could have gone to a different border guard. Listen, I myself, as you probably know, have been through
Mhm.
my own share of stuff. My ex-husband was deported on the way back from our honeymoon. I was denied entry when I first did my first H-1B. Not denied entry, but that was way back when you could call the Vermont Service Center and say, I need this to be processed, and
Right,
I got it processed. Nowadays, that does not happen.
right,
So it's like you're unfortunately at the subject to the discretion and at the whim of these border people, and
right,
it depends what side of the bed they wake up on. Sometimes I don't want to say that out loud, it's probably not good, but it's true. It's
right.
really true, and we can only pave a path to your visa success, not your border crossing success.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, and because of all these different inquiries that are coming up. I mean, we started. I think the reality is like if the person is not already in the U.S. and knowing that the rules are, I mean, they're essentially they are here. There might be a requirement of getting waivers in the future
That's right.
to get in the U.S. Right? If a person is not vaccinated, I mean, it's already been now for a little while where you need to show vaccination status just to even get on a plane. But now this is being asked for as well at the land port of entries. But we should see what's going to happen with that. Um, Another option, and I just want to touch on this quickly, the L1, it's an intra-company transfer. So if there's already a person that has a business set up in another country, they don't need to be necessarily an owner of that company, but if that company is looking at expanding to the US, so both companies are going to continue to exist, there is the L1 option, right? The
Hmm.
L1 intra-company transfer. From an individual perspective, we do need to show that the individual has been employed for at least 1 year in the last 3 years. The companies have to be related to each other. Um, and I don't know, Lauren, if you have
So
anything to add.
sure, lots of L1 opportunities. If you qualify for an L1, the beauty is as long as you're vaccinated, you can potentially get a green
Right.
card. What might also work, especially if you're here in the US or you want to be in the US or you're just done and you want to come or whatever, is get an E2, and after a year in E2 status, so you could just do the 2-year E2, and after a year, if you have enough a substantial enough business in Canada and the US, which we know that are the somebody near and dear to our hearts
Mhm.
did this and do an EB1C, which is an
Mhm.
a multinational executive, and that's available if you have. It doesn't have to be the same business. It just has to be common ownership and meet certain requirements. So you can do that too, or you can also go into L1, not new office L1 status after that first year as well, because you no
Right.
longer have a new office. So there are options. E2 is not the only option. I
Mhm.
just think, and I know Fadi, you'll agree, if E2 is available, take advantage of that option, because
Well,
it's,
not just that. Yeah, if I may just add,
of course.
even and I do this, quite frequently as a, as perhaps as a strategy move. But the L1, if a person already has a business in Canada, right, and now they want to expand into the US, well, getting an L1 startup, that's one way to do it. I mean, L1 startup, though, would only get you status for 1 year.
One
And
year.
what's going to happen after 8, 9 months? You're going to be
Exactly.
knocking on our door saying, hey, I need to renew this, right? So even when an L1 is viable, and maybe for various reasons, the L1 might be the way to go, but
Hmm.
the E2 is always a good option
Right.
regardless, right?
Agreed. If
So,
it's there,
and it's
it's not there for everybody. That's the key. But for Canadians, every day of the week,
right, and you're not uprooting yourself going for,
or a
like
year maybe.
for a year, and then again putting in an application, hoping it's going to be approved, hoping the business did well enough so that the officer is going to say, yeah, I agree, this should be renewed for another 2-year period. So yeah, that is, it's another option, definitely.
I
But
think the same thing applies when you're talking about TN visas. So,
right.
because with the TN visa, which I actually had several of them, it's a
Hmm.
year. So, at the time when I had TN visas, I didn't have a family, it was just me.
Right.
When you have a family and you're moving, not only do you only have a year, but you're subject to the discretion of your employer.
Right.
So, I'm always going to recommend that you have a little more control with an E2, and your spouse gets a derivative visa and can work for anybody. So
Right.
why not go that route if as long as you can afford it and you can find a good business, which we will help with.
Right. And you know that the with the E visas in general and the Ls, but there's been a recent development where the E2 dependent spouse, or E1 dependent spouse, or L2 dependent spouse, they're going to get work authorization that's incident to status, right?
Meaning they don't have to apply separately, right?
Yeah, exactly. So they don't have to apply to get work authorization where, in 2021, when we were doing these, it was taking more than 6 to 8 months to actually get work authorization. So imagine that. Imagine waiting for the E2 process itself, getting the E2, and then still waiting another 6 to 8 months to actually get work authorization.
Exactly.
It was quite a bit. So that is a very positive development. Not
Absolutely.
just it's not just a time saver; it's a money saver. It's everything. It's a perfect time to take advantage of that.
Yes. Do you want to talk about a little more about the elephant in the room?
Yeah,
Vaccinations?
sure. No, I just want to also touch on with the TN. Just wanted to
Yeah.
clarify that these days the TN is actually good for up to 3 years,
Okay.
renewable indefinitely. But yeah, so it got changed some time ago. So vaccinations is what you want to talk about. So what do you want to say about that?
So, again, listen, all that we have control over is your visa path, not your border path.
Right.
So, even with a visa in hand, you may not get across the border. This is part of why I like franchises, because if a client invests in a franchise, then they have the opportunity. Most We will negotiate this through my franchise colleague
Hmm.
to get what's called an E2 visa contingency built into the franchise documents. So why is that good? Well,
Hmm.
when you're buying a franchise, you're spending whatever, 100,000, let's say,
Hmm.
because that's always the rule of thumb number, right?
Right.
And instead you put a deposit and the rest of the money goes into escrow as
Hmm.
long as you have this visa contingency. And then the only way that the money comes out of escrow and that the purchase closes is when and if you get the visa. So
Hmm.
most successful franchises that are decent brands that are used to working with E2 clients will build this in, and I will not that I won't allow, but I certainly won't advise my clients to go for a franchise without it. So that's a big advantage. That's never going to happen if you're buying an existing business, because who's going to wait?
Hmm.
If they're
Right.
selling their business, they want the money now.
Right.
So, you
So
know,
that is though happening with the franchises often enough that you've been seeing.
absolutely.
Because you
Yeah,
are involved more on that end than I. Like we
correct.
the immigration side of it. So okay, so that's very good to know. No, and I agree. If a person's buying an existing business, to have that person that's selling the business wait, half a year longer to actually, to actually offload that business, that's a lot to ask for.
Yeah, exactly. It's challenging. And I mean, they're not going to do it for the most part. And a lot of business brokers are hesitant to work with visa applicants because of that, because
Hmm.
they don't want to put their money up. So it's a conflict. One client wants to sell now, one client doesn't want to pay now. So some are willing to take the risk, and that's fine. But your money being in escrow has been shown to be sufficient as long as it's just a contingency based on that. And boom, it comes out of escrow.
Hmm.
So now a lot of people say, oh, well, with franchises, we have to pay all these other fees and we have to do this. You know what? At the end of the day, it's worth it, because when you're coming from another country, one thing to really be aware of, no matter if it's, Canada to the US, I've done it, you know, it's not an easy transition. It's hard. There's a lot of things. Even I still learn stuff. Banking, completely different. So many things are just different here, and we take it for granted in Canada. Oh, we're just like the U.S. Well, now maybe polarization has changed that, but
Right.
when I did it, I didn't really realize how significantly different it is to live in the US. And the rules here are different, the regs, everything. So franchises, I like them when you're moving your family, you've got enough to deal with. If you
Right.
have a franchise, somebody else has your back along with you. And I feel that that's so important. A turnkey business can give you that leg up. You may not be able to have as much freedom, but at the end of the day, you'll have a lot of support that you wouldn't otherwise have.
Right. And I mean, if it's a married couple that's looking at coming down,
Like,
maybe deciding who needs that flexibility to find
exactly.
a job,
A
right?
job.
So
Who
uh,
makes more money?
yeah, so between the couple, having one person apply for get the E2 through a franchise or however other means, and the E2 dependent spouse being able to get an open work authorization, being able to work the way I like to put it, you can work the the spouse is going to have more flexibility than
A
the
lot more.
right. They can pick up a part-time job if they want to, a couple
They
part-time
can
jobs.
sell real estate.
You can sell real estate. You can
It's crazy.
work full-time and part-time and drive Uber and do whatever you want
Right,
to do.
exactly. It's kind of, when you think about it, it's kind of crazy, because you would think that the investor would have more flexibility logically. But immigration law is not logical, is it?
Mhm. Right.
There's no logic in what we do every day. It's just we have to follow the rules and honor the rules and everything like that.
Right. Exactly. So in terms of maybe you can share your experience in terms like when you're talking to clients these days and they are already in the US and they want to to ask you are the vaccines going to be are they going to be a stumbling block to get status? What do you tell them?
I tell them that I can, at the moment, the answer is no, but I
Mhm.
can't control what's going to happen with the government, and they have to roll the dice.
Mhm. Right. And it would be, I mean, again, what I'm seeing and what I think pertaining to the current rules, we have been doing again those E2 status changes, L1 status change.
Hmm.
And, if you end up getting status for 2 years or so, who knows what's going to happen in the future with respect to the rules? You worry about that at that time.
Right, exactly. That's exactly right. You have to, at the moment, if you want out of Canada or wherever you are, you just have to roll with it, and you're kind of in a waiting game.
Right.
And
Okay.
Fadi and I wish we knew the answers, because it would certainly make our lives easier for sure.
Right. Anything else you want to share? Maybe we can field some questions soon.
Sure, I'm happy to field some questions. I would just say that if you're thinking about it, don't think, because you have to act, because the rules are likely to change and we don't know when. So
Yeah. Oh, you
take
know what?
action.
I actually do have a question. I mean, you've made that move, between Canada to the U.S. How do you find, you talked about lifestyle being, generally better in the U.S. I think you would agree to that. But how is the cost of living in comparison to, like, you and I are both, like, Southern Ontario.
Yes.
We know, how things are here. You have family in Southern Ontario, so what is,
Funny. Well,
yeah.
you can ask Michael this because he gives you the answers all the time. But so I have a 5 bedroom home. I couldn't afford a 5 bedroom home in Toronto.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't need a 5 bedroom home, but this house would be about 4 times the price in anywhere in the GTA.
Right.
And I think overall the cost of living is lower. I mean, everything is relative because if you are a have a job, generally you earn less money. But as an entrepreneur,
Hmm.
there's huge opportunity. And think about it, if you've never been an entrepreneur before, here's your chance.
Right.
Take advantage of it.
Right. Live the American dream.
Live the American dream. I came down here as a lawyer, not an entrepreneur. I became an entrepreneur because I couldn't find the right place for myself.
Right.
So and I haven't looked back.
Hmm.
Sometimes I look back. No, I'm just kidding.
Right. Okay. Okay. So maybe we can maybe field some questions.
Sure.
Um, all right. So the first question. Okay. So what are incentives for Canadians to move to Florida? Yeah.
Incentives. Well, sunshine, getting a social security number, being able to build credit, having freedom, having the opportunity to be an entrepreneur,
Hmm.
get out of lockdown, just to name a few.
Right. Um, okay. No, that's fair enough. Um, let's see. What is the EB-2 visa of the U.S.? That's something we probably want to speak about separately pertaining to that question. Just to sort of a real brief overview, the EB-2 is it's an employment-based second preference category. Typically it's for someone that has a master's degree or a bachelor's degree plus 5 years of progressive experience, and they have a position in the U.S. That wants to sponsor them for an EB-2. There is also another pathway with an EB-2, which is a national interest waiver application. That's an application pathway that does not require an employer. But again, I think this is better served, maybe speaking one-on-one with a professional, so
Yes.
that you can get that question answered appropriately for your own circumstances. All right. Been looking into moving with my family from Canada. What I saw, you need close family like a brother or mother. We have an aunt in Hawaii, and I operate a semi trucking business. Okay, yeah. So yeah, one of the pathways to go to the U.S. is through a family sponsorship. But what a lot of people don't know is that the family sponsorship, it's only limited to a spouse, parent, child, or sibling, and it's not always the best path. Even if that option is available for the individual. For example, if a person has a sibling, so a brother or sister that's in the U.S., that's a U.S. citizen, and they want to sponsor them, many people are shocked to hear how long they're actually waiting to actually get
Crazy.
that. Right? We're talking about, depending on where the country they're from, but it could be 14, 15, 16 years, even
Yep.
longer, depending on the nationality. So it's not always a great path. Now, on the other hand, if you have a trucking business, I know personally we've seen a lot of trucking businesses that have set up shop in the U.S., and they have gone in with, whether it's an E2, an E1, an L1. All of these options may be available for you depending on your circumstances. Again, it's probably best to speak to a professional.
Yes.
Be happy to speak with you. Um, Off air here, and discuss what the best option would be in your circumstances.
And Fadi, I know we haven't formally done this. I probably shouldn't put it out there, but if people want, Fadi and I can possibly be available to connect jointly because there is demand for that. So I see that going on in the chat. So we'll talk further about that. And yeah, we can do that. Um,
Okay, perfect. How much does a consultation cost, and what is the duration of the call? Do you
For
want to talk?
you or me?
You want to
So
talk
I will tell you guys, I think anybody that would like to have a consult with me, because my calendar is a little bit insane right now, I'm going to be doing group Q&A sessions. So this way you can ask your questions directly. We'll be able to answer them, but they will be in small groups. I'm hosting my first one on Wednesday. So if you go to Real Estate Across Borders /webinar, I think that's where we'll talk about that Q&A session. Okay.
right,
Real Estate Across Borders is my main website.
right. And for Visa Place Legal, I mean, I think just get in contact with our office. They'll let you know specifics as to what the consultation fee would be. The duration of the calls are usually about 30 minutes, but could be longer or shorter depending on the circumstances. Okay, so yeah, just reach out to our www.visaplace.com. You can see there's a booking page there, or you can dial into our office, and you'll be directed accordingly to speak to somebody that can book that for you. All right, what's the cost as a whole, and not just a consultation fee? That's
Hmm.
a loaded question.
Yeah, well, you'll have to reach out to us. We don't, I mean, I have some options available online, which include Fadi's fee as well.
Mhm.
And again, it's Real Estate Across Borders / I think full service.
Right,
So, or just reach out to me, okay? Because you can find me on Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever, and I'm happy to connect you. And all of these cases are going to go through Fadi's team, so we work collaboratively together. I'll just help you get everything set up and structured, and then it goes over to him to get you the visa.
right. Yeah, and I mean, likewise, if you end up reaching out to our firm initially, I mean, we'll get into the nuts and bolts of what's going to be involved for your particular circumstances. It's not a one size fits all solution here.
It's not.
It really depends on if somebody is setting up if it's a startup versus I'm buying a franchise versus when I want to move my business to the US. I mean, there's so many different ways to do this. So,
Hmm.
all right. The L1 sounds interesting. My trucking company is a corporation, and I am leased to Trimac, and they are in the US as well. I haul crude oil, 10 years. Yeah, I mean, again, there's been a big uptick in terms of I've been seeing trucking companies wanting
Demand.
to expand to the US or move to the US entirely. The big difference, as I understand, for these trucking companies is that currently, if the trucking company is in Canada, doing a pickup and a drop off in the US, that's perfectly fine. A person can use their business visitor status just to do that. But I think the real opportunity is from being able to pick up and drop off in the US, which currently a Canadian trucking company cannot do, right? So that's where being set up in the US, actually getting that work authorization, that might be a good option. Again, feel free to reach out to myself, reach out to Lauren in terms of getting the whole business set up, and we'd be happy to discuss that.
Hmm.
All right, so there are some questions that are not relevant to this. I got my US passport. How can I apply for a social security number? I mean, contact the social security office. I think that's probably gonna be the best thing to do. Can the spouse work in the family business as well? So yes, that is what I was saying. Assuming we're talking about an E2. So if the E2 principal is, has they got the visa as a principal applicant, the spouse would be able to upon getting the work authorization, be able to work for that business as well, or work elsewhere, or set up their own business. They can do all sorts of things, but that is definitely an option. And with the barriers coming down of actually getting work authorization for the spouse, it's actually a really, it's the opportune time to take advantage of this.
Right.
What advice can you give to students applying for a student visa? Again, I don't think it's going to be relevant to this discussion.
Right.
If you need some specific advice, maybe, book a call to our office, and we'd be happy to speak to you one-on-one. I would really like to book a consultation, but no available times. Can you please help with this? Uh, I don't know if that is for Visa Place
Not
Legal
sure.
or for eCounsel. Are you having a booking problem right now?
Absolutely.
You are?
Absolutely.
Okay, so maybe
That's why I'm doing group Q&As.
okay, so maybe that question is probably pertaining to you. For Visa Place Legal, reach out to us, www.visaplace.com, or you can give us a call. The local Canadian number is 416-410-7484.
Fadi, I'm going to get a link to sign up for my Q&A session. They just
Okay.
finished up. So as you're talking, I'll grab that, okay?
Okay, yeah, I think that'll be helpful for the viewers.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so next question.
Here it is, guys. It's realestateacrossborders.com/VIP-session. Okay? realestateacrossborders.com/VIP-session. And you can join us for one of those. We're going to be having them regularly, but the first one is on Wednesday.
Okay. Here's a good question. So if you have a E2 visa, you can only work where the E2 visa applies to.
So you can only work where the E2 visa applies to, but your spouse can work anywhere. So you are married to that business, but
Yes.
that's why you have to carefully choose who is the applicant if you do have a spouse.
One interesting thing as well that we've done in the past is when the E2 applicant thinks like there's going to be different streams of the business occurring, almost like having a hierarchical, like a holding company, but putting all this, like disclosing all of this with the application that we are looking at a construction company, but we're also looking at a property management company. Like that can all become part of the underlying company itself, or the company can be subdivided to other companies as well. Have you seen that
Right.
yourself? Well,
Yeah,
Laura?
and the best thing to do is to contemplate as much of that as possible in the business plan, so
Right.
that you don't end up having to do any kind of amendment or anything like that. Because
Exactly.
it's like if especially if they're complementary businesses like property management and outdoor services and whatever, then
Right.
build it into the business plan. It doesn't mean you have to do it. It just means you're contemplating it. Now, you don't want to say I'm doing 500 things,
Right.
but you want to, at least be realistic about it.
Right. I mean, you're not selling ice cream and doing construction on the side.
Probably not. I mean, unless you want to do it for the construction workers. A donut shop might make sense though, right?
All right. I missed what the amount of investment is for the E2 visa.
You want me to grab that one?
Sure.
No specific amount. Substantial investment in a non-marginal business, subject to discretion. As a rule of thumb, we tend to say around 100,000, but it's really going to depend. If you're building a service business, it's going to be completely different than if you're setting up a massage company, okay, or a restaurant, because you're going to or sell or manufacturing something. So
Right.
everything is relative to the business, and you also have to make sure that the business is going to sustain the employees. So
Right.
again, there's no hard and fast rule. It's generally around 100,000.
Right. Yeah. And we've seen it for a little bit less. We've seen, and the higher the investment, the better it is. That's the only thing I'd like to add. So, all right. Do you have to already have a business purchase to apply for the E2?
Nope. You do not have to, well, to apply. Okay, so sort of. And by the way, I see the thing, Real Estate Across Borders with an S, realestateacrossborders.com/VIP session.
You
So
can even post that if you wanted to, I think.
I don't know how to, it's not letting me do it. Otherwise, I would be happy to.
Okay. No.
But I don't know if I could send it to maybe I'll put it on the chat, the Google Doc. But let me answer the question. So
Sure.
at the time of application, your money is supposed to be at risk, meaning that you are supposed to have purchased the business, invested in the business, set up the business, whatever it is. But But that doesn't, you don't have to have the business before you start the process. You have to have the business at the time of application. You can start the process though.
Right. No, definitely. But I mean, this question does come up quite often, and I know it's look. I mean, it's counterintuitive, right? How am I going to go and invest money into a business where I don't even know if whether I have the E2 approved or not, right? Like it's a little bit counterintuitive, but that's the whole thing with the E2. It's almost like to weed out the serious from the non-serious, right?
Hmm.
I'm sure, you know, applications would be, who knows, 10, 20 times what they would be at today if all you had to do was show that you had the means to invest
Correct.
in business. But the whole thing here is that, you know, there is a substantial investment and the investment is at risk. So by the time the application is sent off to the US consulate, it needs to be at risk. Whether that means you've closed on a business, whether that means you've set up a business and you've shown I've bought equipment, I bought stock, I bought whatever it is. But you can also do it on a contingency basis. So long as the contingency, you know, the same thing that, you know, what Lauren spoke about. If it's, for example, buying a franchise, but buying a franchise, you know, conditioned on getting the E2 approved. So everything, you're still doing going through all the paperwork, you're jumping through all the hoops, you're even transferring the funds, it's going to escrow. That is, you know, technically fine from an E2 perspective, so long as that's the only condition, right?
Right.
So what you can't do is sit on your hands and say, well, I mean, I have all this money sitting in an account, and this is, by the way, Lauren, this comes up with me so frequently
Constantly.
with
Absolutely.
clients. They say, okay, so all I need to do is transfer funds from my Canadian account to a new U.S. account I'm setting up, or a new U.S. business account I'm setting up. No, no, those are not at-risk funds. If you still
Right.
have access to those funds and can say, well, okay, I'm not going to do this anymore, I'm going to withdraw the funds. Those are not at-risk funds, and that's not suitable from an E2 perspective.
Right. That's exactly right. Thank you for that, Carly. I appreciate it. It's why, if they did, everybody would grab an E2 that way, right?
Yeah.
It's true, like you said. I mean, the difference between putting funds in escrow is that you can't touch those funds. You can't. It's not liquid. It's like putting money in the stock. Well, not really. It's, your
Yeah.
money is invested. It's
Right.
the escrow is dependent only on the granting of the visa. If you don't get the visa, that's the only way you get that money back. So that's why it's considered sufficient.
Right. All right. Lauren, you're a popular person. Is there a possibility to connect with Lauren directly?
Yes, go to Real Estate Across Borders /webinar, Real Estate Across Borders /VIP-session, and I will be happy to connect with you directly.
Okay. Okay.
I'm pretty um, available on on social media, so you can find me. My main brand is called Investing Across Borders, and we are building that website out. That's why I don't have it yet, because that's going to be my kind of main central portal.
Right. All right.
What is, if I see a question, is this 100% true? How can we believe it? Look, we are trained professionals. We are bringing you facts, not speculation. The only thing we can't guarantee is the stuff about the border. Well, we can't guarantee you're going to get a visa, but we just do not have crystal balls to help you with the border stuff or the vaccine stuff. That's just not our ballywick. I don't think it's really anybody's ballywick these
Mhm.
days.
All right. How does healthcare work on Visa? Do you purchase a plan? Lauren, do you want to touch on that?
Sure. So, funny enough, my brother happens to be an insurance broker in Ontario, and so most of my clients are getting a 1-year plan, and then they make the transition here, and then we connect you with insurance brokers here that will get you onto healthcare. You will lose your healthcare once you're on an E2, because you won't be able to, well, unless you're mostly in Canada, but kind of defeats the purpose, doesn't it?
Hmm.
So for OHIP, it's a requirement that you're in Ontario at least 5 months of the year to keep OHIP.
Right. Okay. I have a cleaning business for 14 years in Canada. I know I can get the same in the US, in Florida in particular. Okay, how can I get a working permit in Florida? Yeah, this is a pretty common. We've seen cleaning businesses come in the past. We've
Very successful.
successfully done E2s for them, even L1s where
Hmm.
appropriate. But that is definitely something that we can help with. Again, I would implore you to reach out to a professional, discuss it, and I think we would. I think we can definitely help with that.
I see a question about a house purchase. Wondering if I buy a house cash. Nope, does not help with the visa process. Even if you buy two houses cash or if you have financing, none of that helps with the visa process. It has nothing to do with how much money you're put into the house. It has to do with the fact that it's a home. And unless you're a real estate investor with a real estate business, that's not going to help at all. The only thing it might help with, is getting across the border.
Mhm.
And I say might because, again, it's going to depend on who it is that's at the border when you cross, and if they say that that means that you have a justified reason to cross.
Right. All right. What happens if you start a business with an E2 and the business fails? Do you lose your E2 status? Yeah. So the E2 visa is going to be dependent on the E2 business operating. All right. So, but what does it actually mean if it fails? Like if a person has, applied for the E2, gotten the visa for 5 years, and then 2 years down the line, they said, you know what, it's going belly up, it's going bankrupt, or they're shutting down the business, then technically, the E2 visa no longer exists. It's no longer relevant to that business. So, then yeah, you would need to find either a different status to be on, if it's possible, if it's feasible, or else you would have to leave the U.S. Right? It's going to be dependent on the business existing. Now,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't necessarily mean, and I've seen this in the past where, sometimes, a client comes back to me and says, "Oh, I'm concerned. I have a business plan. My 5-year business plan shows that I'm going to do X, Y, and Z in, first 3 years, and I only did this much in the first couple of years. Now what? Are they going to come and knock on our doors and, kick us out?" And so, no, it's not. It doesn't work like that. There's no, at least as far as we're concerned, I haven't seen any interim checks on an E2 business. As long as the
Who
business,
knows if that's going to change, right?
right,
Who
right.
knows?
So I mean, we know for other visa types like the L1, you're actually paying for a fraud detection fee, which is it's a accumulation of funds to fund some certain, enforcement officers. The E2 doesn't have that, right? But of course, you want to keep everything on the up and up. Hopefully, the business is going to do well because it's a good opportunity and everything else. But ultimately, if it's faltering from where you expected it to be, doesn't necessarily mean it's a problem for you.
Well, can I add something to that? Because we have a couple of clients like that right now that we're actually working with together. And so what could happen is, let's say you have a situation like that, and a lot of people were impacted by COVID, for example. So there's some flexibility and leeway a little bit, but you still have to show that your business isn't marginal and that it's an ongoing concern. So
Mhm.
what you can do is you can add to your original investment, augment your business, write a new business plan for your renewal, for example, or even during, if you want to, because a lot of people are concerned, well, I'm getting close to my renewal and the business is still fledgling. What do I do?
Right.
So again, we can change tracks and have a business plan to explain it. We can add to your business. There's lots of options. Expansion is always a good option. Increasing the amount of money is always a good option.
Right. Okay. Does the visa process also work for Canadian permanent residents or only for citizens? I'm assuming they're referencing the E2 because we've been talking about that.
You mean as a right?
Or,
So yeah, you have so unless you're from a country other than Canada that also has an E2, you do need to be a Canadian citizen. You can't be a permanent resident to
but
qualify.
there are, yeah. So, but if, for example, if it's a UK citizen
Right. Or
is,
Bangladesh or
yeah,
Pakistan.
right, right. There are many countries on the E2 list. You can actually go to our website and take a look at the most up to date list. It should be under the U.S. visa column. And then checking on the E2, you should be able to find it there. All right. Let me just seeing the
Body, we knew this would be popular, right?
yeah, for definitely.
I think we're gonna have to probably do this at least every few weeks because there's just so much demand for this from the Canadians, especially like Montreal and Toronto. big time. I never even had clients from Montreal until a month ago, or at least not
Right.
never, but I'm saying in the past little while, and the demand from the Montrealers because of all the lockdowns and curfews and has significantly increased.
Right. All right. I was told it would cost me a minimum $50,000 investment to open a business in Florida. How does that work?
50,000 is probably going to be marginal or not substantial, depending on the business. So, I mean, it's not to say that
It's
that it's
yeah.
not possible. I will
Mhm.
tell you that I could not work with a business investment that was 50,000 because I would not be able to pave the path to that success very easily. And I like to have a substantial investment. That's not to say that Fadi could not work on the legal side. It's just on the business side, it would be challenging for me.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I have seen some businesses qualify for this. For example, a consulting business, right,
Right.
where really all you need is a laptop and nothing further. Then it's a matter of deciding, okay, well, what is going to be the substantial investment in that, right?
Exactly.
Like, how are they going to spend the money for it? Okay.
You can buy a green card. So that's an interesting question. You can sort of buy a green card, can't you? You can buy an EB5 green card, which is an investment currently of 500,000 or a million, depending on the location, and the creation of 10 jobs. Now, at the moment, the regional center program, which was the way to quote unquote buy a green card, is on hold, probably indefinitely. But
Mhm.
there are some direct pooled options that I have access to. Actually, two of my clients this week went into them, and they're great options if you want a green card path quickly. But don't forget, you must be vaccinated to get a green card. So we can only get you the visas. We can't do anything about the other rules. But yes, there are ways to invest passively and get a green card still.
Right.
There's also a way, and this is another great option for somebody to do an E2 to an EB5. So if you have a substantial enough investment, which is again the 500,000, we can find you a business. Let's say we buy you one franchise and then we buy additional locations, or we could buy a property management franchise like Fadi and I were saying, and maybe an outdoor cleaning business, and maybe a property oversight business, and put them together. And you start with the property management franchise, you get your E2, and then you do your EB5 and make sure you satisfy the 10 employee requirement and the investment amount. And you can use that same investment to qualify for both.
Right. Yeah, and we've done that as well plenty of times. So the E2 is considered as temporary, the EB5 is considered as permanent. But if somebody came to me today and said, "Look, I'm investing $2 million in a business. I want to get an EB5." My first question would be, how soon do you need to be there? Because if it's if they're relying on the EB5 alone, then they're probably going to be surprised. It's going to take sometimes multiple years to actually get the EB5 itself to work its way through the process. Whereas using an interim method, an E2, an L1, if it's feasible, there are certain ways to strategize to bring that person to hopefully a quick resolve for what they're looking for. Okay, I see the time, Lauren, and I
Yes.
know there's still a number of questions. Maybe we can do one more.
Sure.
Okay. My wife and I are registered psychologists in Alberta. We're both eligible to work in the U.S. Can we open our clinic in the U.S. as a business? And the answer is yes.
For sure.
That would
But you may have to get qualification though,
exactly,
licensing and all of
and
that.
I've seen that before. You know what? I've even had like non-medical people open up medical clinics in
Right,
some
you can do
states,
that. That's
and
correct. You could a lot of people buy urgent care facilities, or like touching my forehead, Botox and lifts and all of that. A lot of
right,
doctors do that. I have a doctor now who's buying a skincare business, a med spa.
right,
There's one question in the chat that I'd like to address if it's
sure.
okay. Gustavo, what's the difference between the E2 and the 900,000 to buy a green card? So first of all, today it's not 900,000, it's 500,000 today. Could
Mhm.
change as soon as February. Just like with the vaccinations, we don't have crystal balls. The difference is an E2 is a non-immigrant visa, and an EB5 for 500,000 is an immigrant visa. That is the difference, which means it's a green card. The E2 at the moment God knows why, does not have a direct path to a green card. The lobby has been going on for as long as we've been practicing, for sure, but it's still not there. Maybe the pressure now will change that, maybe, because there's so much demand. So maybe that will change. But at the moment, that's the circumstance.
Right. Okay, I think that does it for today. We definitely should be doing this on a more frequent basis, Lauren. Just
I
based on
told you, I promised. I said, Fadi, they're gonna come. You'll see, they're gonna be like asking so many questions. He's like, okay, let's do it. So
Okay, very good. Well, thank you again, Lauren, for taking your time.
thank you,
It's always
Fadi.
a
It's always a
pleasure.
pleasure. Everybody, stay warm, and I look forward to hopefully connecting with you and helping you. And thank you, Fadi, and everybody at Visa Place. Thank you.
All right, thank you
Bye
all.
for
Thanks
now.
everyone for joining. All right, take care.